What is the problem here? What is wrong with where we are in the continent?
We do have challenges in our skills ecosystem across the entire continent.
We run more into opportunities, not knowing that we're not ready for those opportunities.
I think it's the obligation of not only government but even private sector to work together with these young entrepreneurs. And I think it's important that African governments have to take this seriously.
Welcome to Built Different, the UNDP podcast exploring Africa's bold economic and innovation stories, where potential meets possibility. I'm your host, Ntokozo Mahlangu. Thank you so much for joining us. Africa is the youngest continent on Earth. By 2050, it will account for more than half of the global labor force growth. And yet, across the entire continent, millions of young people face a very difficult contradiction. They are more connected, they are more educated, and even more ambitious than any other generation. However, the economy is not absorbing them fast enough. And this is what we are exploring in today's episode, asking the pertinent question of what is structurally broken, what is already being built different, and what must change today to unlock Africa's youth dividend. And joining us today, I'm so excited to have this inspiring young people. Joining us, it is Ayabonga Cawe, the economist and senior leader at ITAC, and as well as another really bright young lady, Mahlatse Mamaila, who is an entrepreneur and founder of INO-Biodiesel. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mahlatse and Ayabonga. I really, really appreciate the time you took to have this conversation with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate taking the time out.
We're having a very important discussion today. More and more, we see how Africa is framed, or the youth population of Africa is framed as this continent's greatest potential. But at the same time, you look at the numbers, how the economy continues to grow. There's been more viewpoints that it's not absorbing young people enough. So I'd like to really find out from your own observations, right? What is the problem here? What is wrong with where we are in the continent?
I think there's a few things we may wish to reflect on. I think the first is that the demographic advantage that we have of having a continent that is relatively younger when compared, for instance, to Asia or Europe, where median ages tend to be much higher, is that you are more likely to have a vibrant consumer market and also a producer base if you are to get some of the constraints right. I think you've mentioned one of them, which is just around skills. But often the question of skills, is quite rhetorical. Skills for what? The whole point, I think, of development is about moving from low productivity, low wage activities to higher productivity, higher wage activities. It's about moving up the value chain in certain products and categories of economic activity. And part of the problem that we've had as a continent, certainly since the first country was independent from colonialism, which is Ghana in 1957, is that our economies have been unable to do two things. One is to undertake an agro-industrial articulation, which means get more people in rural communities gainfully engaged in agriculture that leads to processing of agricultural goods into the things we eat, into the things we wear, and into the shelter we need. And the second thing that we probably have not done as well is to invest in research and development, so that the kind of skills you are able to build in your schools, universities, and in your innovation institutions are actually aligned to the economic activities that as a country you want to have. Take Nigeria, for example. Nigeria for many decades imported fuel. Nigeria now is refining oil on the back of the oil discoveries and the deep oil base that it has. But the skills you need to import fuel, finished fuel, is not the same skills you need to refine oil. And so a big question arises if we're going to raise the skills issue. I think the skills issue is not a static thing. It evolves.
I think I want to come back later to the issue of skills, and I think you've mentioned quite a number of things there, which I want to bring in Mahlatse in that, like in your own observations, because I think the position you currently hold right now must have been a direct impact of how you saw, the state of affairs, and you were like, there's something I need to do. So according to you, what's wrong with this continent currently?
Currently working with youth in Limpopo, Northwest, Mpumalanga, and Gauteng in skill development. I think we still have an issue. I don't know if I can put it as our leader or the government, as it's not youth friendly. It's very discouraging, but we're just pushing as entrepreneurs. So it's so difficult for us to reach out to more unemployed youth in rural communities, as we're not only focusing on just teaching them or training them, but we want to create a permanent employment. We still have the issue with the government on the policy are not youth friendly. So we still challenged with the government, and I don't know if it's the leadership or the red tape for us.
But what are these policies, like, according to you? And I'll come back to you as well, Ayabonga. You're speaking of something that's very critical, because we always know that for development to happen, policies need to create an enabling environment. So according to you, what would you say are some of those policies that are not really conducive to this country's development?
Especially for us to train youth in rural communities, you need to be accredited, you need to be credited, you need to have the certificate in place, the permits, and also to be commissioned and audited. But when we start in the business as young entrepreneur in South Africa, we need to be compliant, which is the very first thing, that we need to be 100% compliant in the energy and in the fuel industry. So especially as women in entrepreneur in the men-dominated industry, so accessing to the fund is a huge problem. Yes. For us, we do have the market where I've attracted the market in Germany, where they want me to supply them with 60 million liters monthly, which is a huge breakthrough. But the challenge is still there. Standards, do I meet the standard in exporting? And also, do I have the infrastructure in order, the resources and the finances?
Yeah. Ayabonga, I mean, she mentions quite a few policy constraints, right? And in your first response, it kind of gave a full understanding of the architecture in the continent as well. Would you say it's the same thing that affects, all the youth all across the continent, or this are uniquely South African?
Well, I think I must first say, Ntokozo, what Mahlatse is raising, I think, is fair comment. And I say that as somebody who works in government.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm a young person who works in government, but we can debate that.
You are a young person.
But I think it is fair comment that young people who are working in product markets like the one Mahlatse works in, where you are handling hazardous material that has certain authorizations that are required, it is sometimes difficult to get those authorizations. It is sometimes difficult to get the information about where it is to go and knock. Mahlatse raises something fundamental, not just unique to her case, but I think it's something you find for many young entrepreneurs across the continent. I've got a compelling product proposition. I've got a market in Germany. I'm battling to get an export authorization, or even the things I need from a standards and a compliance perspective in order for my product to get to that destination market. And I think it's the obligation of governments across the continent to take very seriously the task, one, of building the capacity of young entrepreneurs on the continent. One, to know what compliance hurdles you need to meet. One, to take you through, some of these compliances are not cheap. Ask any young African producer in agriculture how expensive it is to get GAP compliance, which allows you to be able to export into different parts of the world. And so I think it's the obligation of not only government, but even private sector on the continent to work together with these young entrepreneurs, aid them where it is that we can and where it is appropriate in being able to meet these compliance standards. But also, we have many research institutions, CSIR, the Innovation Hub, Technology Innovation Agency, and others, who ideally should be ensuring that Mahlatse's product, as she is developing it, is able to have the most cutting-edge frontier innovations and technology. And I think all of these things, were we to ensure that they work together, sometimes they sit in different pockets in many of our countries. But I think, to answer your question, indeed, I don't think it is unique to South Africa. There are many young entrepreneurs working in the circular economy, making business of what we might deem waste material that are in great need of support. And I think it's important that African governments have to take this seriously.
There's a lot that's happening here in the continent. Let's say South Africa currently, right now, Mahlatse, we'll get to your story, but you came up with a great innovative, business model that actually the world currently needs when we look at, climate change or there's commitments to transition into more renewable energy sources and all. The core ether of this podcast, right, is around changing the narrative of how Africa is looked at. And listening to all these constraints, right, they're not uniquely new in a sense. If we think about how this continent has always been a source of how the rest of the world extracts so much from us. We have the sources, we have the critical mineral wealth and all, but the world comes and takes from us. They sell back to us for more expensive prices. Is it because maybe the narrative really we haven't changed how we position ourselves to the world as in a continent that has the knowledge, that has the know-how and the willingness?
Well, I don't know, Ntokozo. I'm more worried about what narrative we tell to each other.
Yeah.
I'm more worried about what narrative we tell to ourselves as Africans. I say this because the issue you raise, for instance, of an extractive relationship between the world and the continent is not a new thing.
Yes.
I mentioned Ghana earlier on. I'd encourage many African people to read the book by the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, Sajefo, as he's called in Ghana. And his book speaks about exactly what you are raising. He writes it in the late 50s, early 60s. It's nearly, 60 years later, and we are faced with the same issue. So it's not new. But I think what is new, though, is that you've got a generation of young people on the continent who have got innovations, who have got inventions, who have built very global and world-beating companies and ideas, and for whom the colonial gaze and how the other parts of the world see us and reflect alongside us is immaterial. We have a task to raise and lift the consciousness and awareness of young people on the continent about the immeasurable potential they have to change their own lives. And I think that is much more important from a vantage point of narrative control. What messages are we reinforcing to each other?
Yeah, kind of like a domestic
I'm a young person
narrative
in government.
exchange.
I'm going to give you an example. I'm a young person in government. I'm not persuaded that there are no episodes of successful statecraft on the continent. It can't be.
Yeah.
I'm not persuaded that there are no successful young people who are in governments making decisions that are moving markets every single day. Go to Botswana, go and see how young the finance minister is. Go and see how young the mines minister is. Go and see some of the big things they are doing, renegotiating decades-long relationships, imperial relationships with the likes of De Beers and others, linking together with their Angolan partners, other young leaders in Angola, to begin to say, we have this commodity. We want to do it differently.
Yeah.
Go and speak to the young people that are in pharmaceuticals saying all of the diseases in Africa, but none of the cures are in Africa.
Yes.
None of the vaccines are in Africa. So in a sense, I think what is more important is the messages we tell to each other. And it's important that we get more Mahlatses out there telling their stories to other young Ayabongas so that we draw some kind of inspiration, an example, and force of example from the successes she has had.
Yeah, which really wants me to take there because we keep talking about Mahlatse's story and we actually haven't told it. So Mahlatse, I really want to get into your story because you hold such a special and very inspiring story.
My business was inspired by an article. I've read about the advantages of waste oil. It was during COVID-19. At lockdown, we were sitting home doing nothing. I'm coming from an accounting background.
Oh, really?
So, yes. So I was just sitting and someone shared on the group something about the biodiesel popped in. Then I saw, okay, there's this opportunity in circular economy. I don't have I don't have an idea or minimum minimum knowledge in the energy industry. I found myself doing research every day. I'm on, what is this biodiesel? Then I discovered there's this company that they collect waste oil, but they rebleach it to cooking oil. So I did more research, and as soon as they opened, I registered the company. Then I approached the Innovation Hub where they approved my idea. I went there for 12 months incubation, which I went with waste management department. I was incubated to producing the biofuel and also from like starting scratch from collecting the waste oil on how to handle it in the waste management side. And at that time I didn't have the money, so I was only able to produce 100 liters monthly. In that time,
Who were you producing for? Where was it going?
no, I was just producing that time just to test it, because I started posted in 2020, but there were people approaching me like, oh no, I do have it, but I can give you just to test it. And we also tested it on the generator. So I did apply this competition. It's in Nigeria, it's UNB, the Tony Elumelu Bank. Yes, I applied for the program where I qualified for $5,000, which I reinvested into the business. And I was also, after that, I was recognized by Nomza Mombata, which she invested into the business. That's where I took the money, the profit, reinvested in the business. And here we are today, we're able to produce from 500,000 weekly.
Really?
Yes.
And who's your client base currently?
Currently, we supplying the mining. The mine is in Northwest and Limpopo. We just started with the mine. It was closed, but they recently opened here in Johannesburg in Bramfisher. And also we supplying it to the farmers. We reaching out to the market in Botswana. We supplying Botswana and Zambia. It's where we attracted the market in Germany. So for us, with the German opportunity, it's impossible for us. And it's a big thing. Yeah. But as I'm still learning in the energy industry, I still need to build myself the structures and the systems to be in place before I look into the other markets.
I mean, just briefly, I think this is really an amazing story. And it speaks to what Ayabonga was saying, that these are the kind of stories we need to share amongst ourselves to inspire ourselves, but to really showcase that Africa has functioning brains that are able to come up with game-changing ways or strategies to move forward. But earlier you also spoke about, some of the challenges that a lot of young people face. What were some of the biggest challenges and how you overcame them?
No, the biggest challenges, we're still facing them as young entrepreneurs. Firstly, I can say as young entrepreneurs in Africa or maybe in the world, we worried more about the financials, but we lacking the financial skills. As we only need looking to get the money, but at the end of the day, we're not knowing what we're doing with the money. Like when the government gives me 100,000, then tomorrow I don't have anything in the pocket. The cash flow is the problem. I think with me, it was more into financial skills, the compliance, and also the production facility, because it was very small. I was just producing at someone's place, so which I was only able to produce, it was 100 liters, which I tried to approach like other entity. But what I did with my challenge, it was finances, the structure and the compliance, but it did not discourage me to stop building the business. So what I did with me, I took the money that I made profit and reinvested it into the business. With the competition that I've been winning, I've been engaging with them to assist me with the entrepreneur skill development and in the even a mentorship and tailored coaching with the expert in the energy industry to assist and build me, to walk this journey with me and to teach me how to be disciplined, to stay disciplined, especially in the finances and also on how I'm making the decision, because we run more into opportunities, not knowing that we're not ready for those opportunities. A lot of us entrepreneurs, we are not ready for the funds. Yes, we're not really ready. after receiving the funds, what are you going to do with the money? Are we going to go back to the government and ask more money? Or are you going to build the business that it will grow itself or maybe invest somewhere tomorrow? So I think those challenges, I've worked around on them on myself. I stopped blaming the government because I was like, no, it's all about the government. They took me to Germany. Yes, we can say all we want, but I've seen a light with the government side where they assisted me with the private entities where they still working together with me, like McDonald's. They're working together with me in collecting the waste oil from the McDonald's in Gauteng.
So they provided those links for you. It was
Yes, as they currently still training me so I can meet their standards and ESG. So they working together with me till I get those compliant 100% so I can permanently work with them.
Ayabonga, earlier you mentioned, right? You asked this question to say, like, skills for what? We keep talking about skills, but skills for what? And I want to like kind of go back to that part, according to you, according to your observations, according to, what you've been seeing around, what are some of these really critical skills that can be game changers?
Well, I mean, this is the point I was trying to make, Ntokozo, which is that Mahlatse's earlier comment about challenges in engaging the state is fair comment. But you see, the state is not homogeneous.
Yes.
The state has many institutions. The state has many pockets. The mention, for instance, of the Innovation Hub. The Innovation Hub is a provincial government entity which works with entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, the entire ecosystem. And I think in the question of skills, we do have challenges in our skills ecosystem across the entire continent. The reason why I asked the question about what kind of skills is that for us to complete the loop on skills, we need to have a discussion about what some in the literature call a technological base. Now, what is a technological base? It is the combination of skills, raw materials, processes, and ultimately products that you are able to develop as a country. Give you an example of South Africa. South Africa's technological base has historically been centered around the minerals energy complex. So if you look at the capability that from a skills vantage point we've been able to develop, it's been capability earmarked to mining as a key driver of our exports. And so you are likely to find in South Africa mining engineers. You're likely to find knowledge, which I think is the most crucial ingredient, in terms of patents, in terms of intellectual property, geared towards mining. And you're also likely to find capital equipment, machinery, and so on, that has been built up domestically in South Africa to service mining. Mahlatse is saying now some of her customers who need some of this oil are coming from the mining sector. Now, it's not unique to South Africa. Many African economies are reliant on mining. But what do we need to be thinking about? There are new skills, for argument's sake. We work in industrial policy, manufacturing. There are skills that are needed in the application of AI in manufacturing. What is AI? AI in manufacturing is what we would call a productive force. It allows us to unlock greater process efficiencies in manufacturing. It allows us to make very good use, reducing wastage of raw materials. It allows us to make use of second and third stage materials, right? How do I repurpose in a textile mill all of my offcuts, repurpose them and reintegrate them into my production process to reduce costs? But also AI allows me to reduce downtimes. Now, the skills that I need, if indeed I want to deploy, whether generative or other forms of AI into manufacturing, require an entirely different base of knowledge in your economy to be able to do it. I come back to the example in oil in Nigeria. The kind of skills that must be produced by Nigerian universities in the oil and gas sector now must not only be those about handling oil coming from elsewhere, handling oil leaving Nigeria to be refined elsewhere, or handling oil that is already refined coming into Nigeria. The skills you need now in Nigeria are about how do you repair the infrastructure for refining purposes that has been there? How do you design that? How do you, we think of oil as just something that you put into your car. But anything from your Vaseline to your chemicals to your packaging materials, some of them have oil derivatives. So how do you begin to create, on the back of this one technological base linked to oil, Remember, I said it's skills, it's knowledge, it's raw materials, it's processes, it's machinery. How do you repurpose that to not only make fuel for vehicles, but to make Vaseline, to make hydrocarbons, petrochemicals, and all of those things? And I think then if we are to have the skills discussion in that way, it takes us forward.
Yeah.
We can cry until our faces are blue. We don't have enough skills. We have skills mismatches. There's not enough jobs. But actually, how do we take that discussion forward? What are the skills that are needed in Angola as an oil-producing nation that can be, in a complementary fashion, shared with another oil-producing nation in Libya and in Nigeria? And we create regional bodies that have the same set of standards. So that Mahlatse tomorrow, when she wants to export recycled oil into parts of the continent, she doesn't have to meet South African standards and then have to meet a raft of other standards in all the other markets she has to share into. Now, the reality in Ntokozo is that no one is going to have this discussion for us. Yes. Many of the people in decision-making roles are not going to be alive for very long.
Yes.
And so it's the obligation of young people to place this on the agenda.
Yes.
Go and look at the Gen Z protests of Kenya.
Yeah.
Young people in Kenya said, well, we are unhappy about the fiscal decisions being made by Abokoko, Nabomkulu, the older people.
Yeah.
We are a bit unhappy with it. And aside from just sitting in a corner and lamenting, or on a podcast like this lamenting, we are going to go and do two things. The first is that we are going to fashion an alternative. We're going to say, you as the Mkulu have put together this fiscal framework. Here's our alternative.
Yeah.
We're going to engage you. And as we engage you, we're going to make sure that if you don't hear us, we will use the only power we have, which is the power of coming together and with the sheer force of our numbers, showing you that we are unhappy.
Yeah.
That's the kind of young people we want.
Yeah.
And so the skills debate needs the same type of movement.
The same energy as well. And I like a lot of what you're saying there as well, because this conversation around skills need to also match up with the current systems that need transformation, right? If that may be the educational curriculum at either high school or education or higher learning institutions. But Mahlatse, I want to come back to you quickly, just very briefly around, we just segue into technology and AI. And I'd like to get a sense of how you are leveraging on the technology and AI potential, if you are, already.
It's so amazing because we've been working on this since last year, but we have not yet launched it into INO-Biodiesel. We're still doing our research and making some few collaboration, which we want to introduce a blockchain technology and AI waste management as we working together with the restaurant, where sometimes they have a flow or spill of used cooking oil, which it causes, and also the spill on the river. So we want to put that, that technology. We're still working with the international companies, private companies, and also local, in coming together and coming up with the technology that we can put in, into restaurant that we're working with, and also in water, where it can detect that there's a spill of waste cooking oil. And also when we are away, I'm away from the factory, I can be able to log in on the app and see if the processing is going in correctly, or maybe there's a water content in the used cooking oil, or maybe the water content in the cooking oil, or maybe in the final product, or the test it went well while I'm away from the company, from the factory. Because right now I need to be for me to heat the used cooking oil to check in the temperature to see the process it's going well. There's no water content. I need to be there. So if we put in the AI and technology in our business facility, on our systems, it's going to be easier for us to detect that and control the processing, the processing procedure in our factory, which is already happening in India and Dubai. So we're still working together to fund that and come up with a solution in putting together the AI and introducing and launching it into INO.
Yeah. No, great stuff. I think there's a lot of obviously great potential with AI and technology, and we've seen that more and more, right? Like when they speak about skills that are able to take today's youth to the next level is always around AI and technology. Ayabonga, you mentioned something which I thought, oh, this is actually quite interesting here. So what you were talking about has a lot to do with doing things differently, right? And the energy of the young population today. And how we usually begin this podcast, we ask a very specific question around when you hear the words built different, as a young South African or as a young leader, what actually comes to mind? What does it mean?
African youth are, at least of this generation, they are built differently. And that's what for me comes to mind. You mentioned AI earlier. One of the things that we underestimate is what African people have done with the internet. The African continent is a mobile-first continent. Go elsewhere in the world, how people access the internet is via desktops and what are called notebooks. Whereas here, the proliferation of the internet has primarily been on mobile platforms. And so the diffusion of knowledge, information, and even, I would argue, money on the continent. The continent of Africa and the continent of Asia are the home of mobile money, for instance. The application of transnational repatriation of money, remittances, is a very continental phenomenon. If you look at Mukuru, Mpesa, and many of the other developments. So I think in a way, the domestication of innovations across the world has unfolded differently on the continent. And I argue that our own economic fortunes, we in the continent have built those differently. We don't talk about it, of course. And I come back to the point I'm saying that, if you don't craft your own narrative, then you're going to become comfortable in accepting what people will say about
the continent.
And I'm more worried about what stories we're telling about ourselves. And so part of the stories that we have to really place in the mainstream around our own stories, whether on social media or even traditional media platforms, is also about this question of how young people every single day are building this continent differently. And that difference is, I think, one of our biggest strengths as young people on this continent in relation to any other people in the history of the world.
Great. Mahlatse, what about you?
To me, it means I don't quit when things get hard. I handle pressure. I stay focused and I move with discipline, not excuses.
And that's what makes you built different. I think our conversation has been a good mix of challenges, solutions here and then all, but I want us to close it off with what are the quick wins that we need to either leverage on this great potential of aligning skills, youth skills, with technology and AI, and what transformations can happen like immediately or in the next year or two.
I don't think any meaningful change anywhere in the world has happened with that short-term mindset. I think as young African people, we must learn from the experiences of the world. The first thing, your task as a young person is to learn. Whether that is learning in a classroom, learning in a factory, learning in your own business. The main task of young people is to fill and accumulate as much knowledge and insight about where it is that they are. And in then acquiring that knowledge and insight is to undertake a very focused and long-term mission to ensure that every single person on this continent who is in need of food has their tummy filled. Everyone on this continent who is in need of shelter has a roof over their head. Everyone in this continent who's in need of knowledge is able to access that knowledge. And I think those are the primary tasks that we have. There are no quick wins in that. I come from the student movement, and our understanding is that these are long transitions. The continent of Africa hasn't even celebrated 100 years of independence. That's a long period, yes, but it's a very short period in the history of the world. We have a long-term task that we have here. Chinese young people speak of the century of humiliation. That was less than 200 years ago. they still see that as something that they must overcome today. We have experienced our own humiliation as African people across the world. We have an obligation to contribute to the renewal and the renaissance of our continent. And that's not a short-term thing. It's not something you do in 2 or 3 years.
It's over time.
It's something that we have to commit to making every single day, to Mahlatse's point, a reinvestment in our enterprises, in ourselves, in our communities, and to do so for the long run. We might not see the benefit of it. But it doesn't mean you plant a tree because you don't plant a tree because you don't think you're going to sit in its shade.
Yes, exactly.
So you plant it because sometimes really it's got nothing to do with you. You're doing something so that tomorrow, 2 or 3 generations beyond you, there's a different basis and terms of engagement with the world for those who might come from us. So we're playing a test match here, not T20.
No, thank you for that. Mahlatse, what, according to you, what will take us forward? What will move the needle currently?
No, like he said, it's not an overnight thing.
Yes.
Things won't change tomorrow. So with me, I can say it's more, and on my side, it's collaboration and partnership. As I said before, that I'm working with youth in Gauteng, Limpopo, Northwest, and Mpumalanga, training 30 youth in film manufacturing, and also giving them monthly stipend, and 30% goes into the community trust, which in Limpopo, 2 years back, we have built our first water research facility in the community, where the community can access to safe, clean water. So we collaborating with Visa and EY. They do have money. So they're looking for us entrepreneurs to reach those deep rural communities where they don't know the pain. I'm coming from the village in Limpopo, where I know the pain, the challenges we're facing there, and also the opportunities that we can't get well. They are in the city. So we're working together with the private entity so we can make a little change one step at a time every year in the rural communities, and also not only in training them or maybe giving them skills, but looking to employ them permanently.
No, thank you so much. And I think it really definitely speaks to even a bit of what you touched on, Ayabonga, earlier, this public-private partnerships, because it can't always be government. It can't be the UN alone or other multilaterals, but private sector really has to come in on board as well to work with all these public institutions. But us, as well as Africans who just really care about our communities, we should be part and parcel of that. And thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedules. Thank you again. Well, there you have it. Africa's future isn't waiting for perfect policies or distant timelines. It is being built now by young people who create their own opportunities and refuse to sit on the sidelines. This isn't optimism, it is evidence. Ayabonga and Mahlatse, thank you again for joining us. This has just been a very eye-opening conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you.